Whew, nothing like a run up to stage to get the blood flowing in the morning. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm Rebekah Brown from Rapid 7. And today we're going to talk about the art and science of threat intelligence. I love being able to speak after Lauren because she talks about the power of story and how it can reach out to people and convey messages and have lasting impacts. And that's really what we need more of in security. We need to be able to tell the story of threats. We need to be able to provide information to people on how they need to respond. And we need to let them know how important it is. What's the impact? How bad could it be? And threat intelligence is what allows us to do that. Threat intelligence bridges worlds when it comes to security. It relies on information on networks. You have to have a technical understanding how networks work, how do attacks work, how do we find this information, how do we pull out these technical details. But it also pulls from a lot of other disciplines as well. It pulls from criminology, from geopolitics, which are becoming more and more relevant to cyber threat intelligence these days. It pulls from linguistics, even psychology. So integrating all of these different disciplines with network security is not an easy task, but it's something that allows us to tell the stories of attacks. It allows us to tell people what's important, how something might affect them, and allow them to make decisions based on that information. It's not an easy task, and the goal of this next 40 minutes is not to make you all experts in threat intelligence. It's to help you kind of reframe how you think about it. A lot of people have kind of misconceptions around what threat intelligence is and how it supports security operations and even what is involved with creating threat intelligence. So I'm going to provide some background, some information on the theory of how all these disciplines pull together to help us make decisions about securing our networks. I'm going to provide some information onto the analytic process so that way you have a better understanding when somebody tells you something that's based on threat intelligence, how they came to those conclusions. And then because I don't like to only exist in the theoretical world, I like to provide some information on how do you actually do this. If you're tasked with threat intelligence, or if you're just curious as to how it works, or if you want to understand better how somebody else might have come to these conclusions that they did, there's some ways that you can do that that don't involve a huge investment or a huge amount of time. So, who am I? I am Rebekah Brown, PDX Beck on Twitter. PDX is the airport code from Portland, Oregon, which is where I'm from. I'm not sure how many of you have seen the TV show Portlandia, but if you have, you basically know everything about my life. We drink hemp milk lattes and ride bicycles and name our pet chickens. But I love Portland. It's a great place to live. My career started out rather strangely. I did not start out in cybersecurity. I did not even start out working with computers. I was a cryptologic linguist with a focus on international relations. And back in the early 2000s when I started working, that meant I was focused a lot on policies, trade, kind of the subtle relationships between the United States and Asian countries. And then things took a sharp turn in about 2005 when we realized that underflowing all of these policy talks and trade relations and economic discussions were cyber actions. There was this kind of under-the-radar war going on between networks that no one really understood how they worked and what it meant and what could possibly be going on. So I was thrown into a bunch of computer science classes. My very first post-high school computer class was network Linux Plus administration, so that was fun. But I had to learn how to take everything I learned before about international relations and apply it to network security. 10 years later, I feel like I've kind of got it down. I am one of the authors of the SAN Cyber Threat Intelligence course, and I teach it as well. And the goal of that class is to help people shorten the time it takes them to go from a world where they view intelligence operations and international politics and relations and network security as two different things and merge them together. And that's kind of a 5-day intense course, but you all look really smart, so I think we can go over all of that content in the next 40 minutes, and you guys will be good to go. So what is cyber threat intelligence exactly? I've seen a lot of different definitions. Some of them are rather long, but the one I like is this. It is analyzed information about the intent, capability, and opportunity of actors in cyberspace. So there's a couple important things about that. First is that it's analyzed information. It's not just data. A lot of the stuff we see that's portrayed as threat intelligence is data, and I'm going to talk about how we get from that data to the actual intelligence. But the other important part is the intent, opportunity, and capability. That gives us our threat spectrum. When we have all three of these things, when we have a hostile intent, when we know that that person, that actor with the intent has a capability, and we know there's an opportunity for them to use it, we end up in the center with a true threat. Now, even if we don't have all three of these, it still lives on the threat spectrum. The most dangerous, I would think, is when we have an opportunity and a capability, because then there's a potential threat. That means that all we need is for someone to decide that they want to couple that capability and that opportunity and harm someone's network. And we know there are a lot of bad guys out there on the internet. We know there's a lot of criminal organizations and nation states and hacktivists who spend their time coming up with ways to carry out their operations against networks. So that intent will probably come. If we have an intent and an opportunity, but there's no capability yet, we have an impending threat, because we know that they're probably spending their time developing that capability. And what we found over the research we've been doing over the past couple years on vulnerabilities and how long it takes that vulnerability to have a corresponding exploit is getting shorter and shorter. So those impending threats, we're just waiting for someone to develop a capability.